Okay, on this episode of the Armchair Coaches Podcast, we are discussing what it's like to be coaching high school football while also dealing with the threat of COVID-19. How's it going, everybody? This is the Armchair Coaching Podcast. Welcome to episode 1, Coaching in the Time of COVID. I'm your host, Coach Sheffer. We have some special guests today who have some experience dealing with the threat of COVID-19 with high school football. I'm going to give them an opportunity now to introduce themselves, starting with Coach Bandstra. Please introduce yourself.
Thank you, Coach. My name is Nick Bandstra. I am presently the special teams and receiver coach at Fairborn High School in Fairborn, Ohio, just right outside Dayton, Ohio. I'm entering my 10th year, I believe, at this point, 10th year of coaching. I also run a YouTube channel. I can type in Nicholas Bandstra, Coach Bandstra on YouTube. I got offer clinics throughout the country. But yeah, thanks, Coach, for having me on. Appreciate it. And like I said, look forward to talking.
All right, thank you. Coach Bennett, you're up.
Hey, Coach Sheffer. I'm Mathew Bennett. I'm the co-offensive coordinator and offensive line coach at Clinton High School in Clinton, South Carolina. Lawrence School District number 56. This will be my 12th year. I started right out of high school, 12th year coaching. And I'm excited to be here, and I appreciate you having me on and look forward to hearing some things from you and Coach Bandstra about how things are going in other states. And hopefully this can give a little bit of encouragement to all the guys out there that are going to be playing in the spring or they don't really know what they're doing right now. Because I think we'd all three agree that, we have as educators and coaches some of the most important jobs in the country, especially in the country we live in right now with all the things going on, dividing people. Football brings people together, and so does education. So looking forward to talking with y'all. Thanks for having me.
Well, thank you guys for coming on. My name's Coach Sheffer, Coach Darrin Sheffer. I'm in Northern Virginia. I am an offensive line coach for Brentsville District High School in Northern Virginia. We are the smallest school in our county, about 1,000 kids. That's kind of saying something that we're the smallest one in our county. We do not have football in the fall here in Virginia. The way that fall sports is working, they have moved everything, all sports, into after December. If I remember correctly off the top of my head, I think that winter sports like basketball, wrestling, I think they're scheduled to start mid-December. Fall sports like football, we are scheduled to start in balmy mid-February. And I think spring sports start in April, but I'm not incredibly confident on that statement. Maybe I'll remember that later. Okay. So this will be my 6th year coaching. I have coached at 3 different schools, and all 3 of them in Northern Virginia. And this will be my first year getting my dream job as the offensive line coach. So I was coaching linebackers for a few years, and I'm not trying to say anything bad about linebackers, but, fat boys are where they're at, so.
Amen.
All right, guys. I'm going to go ahead and get ready with the discussion here. I've got a couple guiding questions for you guys. The first question I wanted to ask is, can you describe the overall protocols that your program is implementing to fight the threat of COVID-19? And Coach Bandstra, I think you're up first.
Well, I'll try to give you a shorter version as humanly possible. The obvious stuff is obviously coaches have to wear masks. If you're more than 6 feet, it's like on the field, you don't necessarily need one, but most of us just wear one at this point. In the weight room, we have one on. Walking through the building, you need to have one on. The players, if they're involved in a physical activity, they do not need to have one on, obviously. You're not going to try to restrict them while they're lifting or doing drills and so forth. It's a lot of smaller groups, which is interesting. Like, I mean, we got 3 groups to get in the locker room so you can change. Like, it's every 3 lockers that person comes in. So you get group 1, group 2, group 3. We usually have 2 different lifting groups. I mean, we're fortunate we have a fairly large weight room. I mean, I can say that. We're fortunate in that aspect. Not all of our facilities are necessarily the greatest in terms of the state, but our weight room's a good size, and our athletic director is taking care of us to make sure we got enough space there. So we usually have like half kids in track down at the track doing speed conditioning while we're up here lifting, and vice versa. Or now really it's turned into like 4 groups, because you'll have a group lifting, and then you'll have 3 breakout rooms for film. Because obviously, I mean, in a perfect world, I mean, we'd all be in the same room going over stuff. But I mean, with COVID, I mean, during film, they have to have their mask on. I've kicked somebody out this week because they forgot their mask. Like, you don't got a mask, you can't come in here. Bye. I mean, deuces. I mean, can't do anything for you. We're out of masks. And you need to start putting one in your bag, not lose it. I mean, it's a lot of cleaning, a lot of spray, a lot of wipe down. Like, after we leave the classroom, spray. In between weight room sessions, spraying stuff down into practice. We spray down all of our bags before we put them up for the night. Luckily, I mean, our administration has done a very good job of getting us enough cleaner. We've done some Zoom meetings, but kind of as I've talked to you guys before we came on, it's hard to keep a teenager's attention on Zoom meeting. And that's how I'm gonna phrase it. It's not the ideal world. I mean, you're not talking about college or professional athletes, because they're playing high school ball because they love it and they want to play football. At college, you have a scholarship on the line. You have academics you have to worry about to graduate. Professional, you're getting paid. I mean, so you're going to pay attention. You have an incentive. Whereas high school, necessarily, it's not necessarily as your hardcore kids are going to pay attention, but not a lot of us have 40, 50 hardcore kids. I wish this was Texas, but it's not. I lived there for 6 years. Beautiful state, but it's not where I'm at. And then kind of like, I mean, we just got the okay today. So like, I mean, they're talking 20 to 30% capacity. They highly recommend immediate family only, not like your 5th cousin. Like, you're talking like parents, grandparents, stuff like that. I know we're putting a lot of procedures on like surveys you have to fill out before you come to the stadium. Mask obviously required. There's possible limitations on concessions. I mean, you're talking distancing in the stands. A lot of tickets for visitors, so they only get a limited amount as well. I mean, it's a lot of busing. They've already talked about seating that we're going to have to do, about how spaced out that is. They've eliminated weekly team meals that we normally had. Because we've typically done them at churches. Like, and unfortunately, I mean, from a social distancing aspect, I mean, not all of them are fairly large, so you can't social distance the way you want. And also, unfortunately, a lot of those churches that provide us have elderly staff members, and they're high-risk people. And we don't want to take a chance at getting a portion of our local population sick just to get our kids' team meals. Do I want our kids fed? Yes. But at the same time, you don't want to put people at risk. I mean, especially high-risk people. Those are kind of all the main things. I mean, I know I'm forgetting stuff, but I mean, you kind of see it's just a lot of protocol, a lot of organizations. Certain things are going to take longer. Stuff that should take 20 minutes are going to take 30 because you got to clean. And you just got to be smarter. You got smaller groups, a lot more targeted stuff. But in the end, is it a pain? Yeah. But I want to play football. I want my kids to be able to play football. I mean, our kids already lost spring sports. Like, I don't want them to lose another sport or get pushed to the spring and try. I mean, I had this conversation with a health teacher today. Trying to fit 3 seasons in 6 months is, in my personal opinion, insane for a 3-sport athlete's physical health. And then on top of that, 2 months later, try to play a fall sport again. That's I could be wrong about that, and don't pretend to be a science teacher or a health teacher by any means, but you can't justify that to me how that's safe. Well, even if all 3 of those seasons are short. So that's kind of my 2 cents on it. Coach Bennett?
We have a lot of similar here in South Carolina, a lot of similar protocols to what y'all have. One thing that y'all have that we don't is we're not allowed at this point to use locker rooms. So our kids come prepared, dressed to practice, like, shorts, t-shirt. We're not, we actually started we gave out helmets Monday and today. This was the week we could start helmets, so our kids will wear helmets for the first time tomorrow since last fall. And we have to spray the helmets down. And right now, until we get to the next phase, which has got to be coming soon because practice starts September 8th, we'll keep our kids' helmets in our equipment room hanging on the hooks after we take them and clean them and put them up. We're similar, though. Coaches wearing masks. Players don't have to wear masks when they're doing physical activities, but just to be extra safe, offensive line, I make them wear their mask when we're going through plays. Our skill guys, our receivers don't wear masks, but our running backs and quarterbacks doing run mesh, they wear masks because they're close and which the mask doesn't stop from touching each other. So I never really understood that part of it. But just if anybody takes pictures for the newspaper, by God, we've got masks on. Weight room, same thing. We got a fairly big team room, so we can get. And I was telling Coach Sheffer earlier, when we started on June 8th, we could have 9 to a group and a coach. So that means on a team, when you figure varsity and JV, 9 through 12, we'd bring in the first group at 6:30, and that's the offensive lineman because I was sitting there when our head coach made the groups. I made sure to get the fat boys in there early before the sun come up. They would come in, and in our team room, we could fit them well beyond 6 feet spaced out, and I could go in there and do installs that way with them. We do the same with the skill guys. And now we're in phase 1.5 because we didn't want to call it phase 2. And we've added, now we're up to 15 kids in the group. So now we got a few other linemen. Skill groups got a little bigger. And we've still got enough room to spread that many out in the team room if we have to go in there if we get a bad weather day or something like that. We've been blessed with weather. This has been the most unbelievable South Carolina summer for not having thunderstorms in the morning because it usually takes us to run all our kids through. Now with 15 in a group, we're done around 11, but we could only have 9. We were going from 6:30 in the morning. First shift of coaches would leave around lunch, and the second shift of coaches might not get out of there until about 2. And most times I would stay for the whole day because I like to be around those young linemen and see, make sure they're figuring it out. But we're very similar. Weight room, we got like a garden sprayer, and we spray everything down in between weightlifting groups. We got time built in to do that, which is another reason it takes so much time because you figure 10 minutes in between to clean, 10 or 15. So we've been rolling. It's been a challenge, but man, it's been great to have our kids back in the building and seeing them work. They've worked their butts off. Cannot complain at all about our young men at Clinton for the most part about showing up.
Coach, you did remind me of something. Like I haven't read fully into it, so I could be misspeaking. But what I saw on Twitter, because I was on the field when the governor spoke today, they talked about no more than a team can't bring more than 60 kids to a game is the current plan with that. I mean, which makes sense. I mean, not that. I mean, you won't limit. I mean, we've spaced out sidelines. Now we can go from 10 to 10, so it allows us to space our kids out. But from what I read earlier, and I could be misspeaking, they said no more than 60 to each side. So you're talking 120 kids on the field at most. I mean, there's smaller schools in our state that aren't going to have that, but yeah. I mean, that's one of the other ones that I just remember that. So
right at this moment, right now as we speak, I have not seen exactly what we're going to do about games, but the last I had heard from our athletic director that he had heard from another athletic director closer to the high school league down in Columbia, stadiums are going to be anywhere from 25 to 50% capacity. And if it's just say 50%, I don't know if that's the number, but if it's 50%, we've got to send 25% of our tickets to the away team and give them till Wednesday to sell them. If not, we get them back. but our stadium, after we just had some renovations done, after renovations, I want to say we seat somewhere close to 10,000. So if you get before the new ones come out, right now it's like 250.
Yeah.
You put 250 people in a stadium that fits 10,000 and spread them out on two sidelines, it's going to be like going to a little league game.
We're very similar to that. We got send a portion to our opponent. They get a allotted amount, but you're talking about massive revenue losses there for high schools, like that cover stuff. So yeah,
it'll hurt us. It'll hurt our athletic department very bad. We've been really fortunate. Our AD last year was his first year as athletic director, but he had been an athletic director for most of his career at two other schools. Athletic director, head football coach. Now he's our athletic director. And he did a great job of building us up a surplus that we can make it through. But it's gonna hurt because I'm at a 3A high school in Clinton, South Carolina, with 850 kids. But football is what stirs the drink. It's a little old mill town. They shut it down and they come to the ball games on Friday. So it's the guy who actually owns the local radio station that carries the game is my next door neighbor. And I told him the other day, I said, man, you should make a killing off advertising, because half the people usually come to the games and have to listen to it on the radio. Mm-hmm. And he said, yeah, I thought about putting an uptick in them charges. And I was like, man, I'm telling you, economics teacher that I am, I'm telling you, you need to make some money off this deal.
Yeah, our state association approved us to monetize viewing rights teams for streaming. So, within 24 hours, they Pick North and Massillon announced they're going to be on ESPNU or ESPN2, like a Sunday, like August. I don't remember what it was, but also those are two of the biggest powerhouses in our state. But still, that's pretty
good.
Yeah, make yourself. You got to deal with revenue shortfall somehow. I had an AD tell me in this state, because they asked that AD, it got brought up, would you be okay with moving football to the spring and leaving the rest of sports? And her response was, if you did that, I couldn't afford to play the fall sports. I don't have enough revenue. Golf is solely an expenditure. You might break even on volleyball if you get good attendance and you're good. And then what cross country brings in zero money. It's a net loss. Tennis is a net loss. You find it, and not mention practice for golf that's all rental fees unless you get that stuff donated, and that's a net loss. We'll probably get to. I'm assuming Coach Sheffer's going to talk to us about college athletics here in a little bit, but that's part of what hurt college. They can't afford those revenue shortfalls.
How long do you think it is until we start seeing the same thing happen to high schools? What programs getting shut down, stuff like that? Because we haven't had that I know of yet here in Virginia. But I can imagine certain places where football does bring in the most money here. But some other places, it's all the money. So if you don't have that revenue somehow, what are they going to do? Are they going to start shutting down programs? What do you think they're going to do?
Go ahead, Coach. Go ahead.
Go ahead.
I think it comes out kind of like he said to the AD. If your AD was good, if you have a good AD who's built surplus and you have an administration that's on top of it, you'll probably be able to make it through the calendar year. But some of those, especially smaller schools, are going to struggle bad. That's just going to be a fact. But that's school districts in general. If you don't have kids in building, or you have kids just going all virtual and maybe selecting. I've talked to kids who've talked about, if my school goes virtual, I'm just going to go homeschool through this program, not through the school. You're talking loss of revenue, depending on how your state structures school funding. That's a whole nother issue as well. But it really just depends. For some schools, they ain't going. They might not notice it because they'll find ways. They have good donors. They have their capacity is still enough to make money, but you're going to make cuts. But other schools, it's going to be a struggle. I mean, I don't think I've made this statement for 3 months. High school has the easiest ability to play compared to college or the NFL. College has the hardest because you're talking the amount of support staff, coaches, players, and the size of the travel, and how revenue oriented that's forced, like from attendance standpoint. That's solely revenue. Whereas high school, it's not necessarily as revenue driven. Schools, if they have the money, will bail that portion out, and they usually just fire ADs and hire new ones who can manage budgets. But in my the main thing is you have to worry about is teams testing positive and having shut down for 2 weeks. Like I've heard of 1 or 2 schools in our state that have done that. Like that's when you start canceling games in season, or if you canceled 2 because you had to quarantine, was that due to the rest of your season? Do you try to play again after not practicing for 2 weeks, or are you done? And that's where it gets really interesting, because what if I now lose 2 home games, but I still got like 2 away games left? Like, because we're only playing 6 games this year, so that's where it's going to really hurt a school. Is I lose my 2 home games, or lose one of my home games in that. That's where you're going to start getting problems. I don't know. It's going to be interesting.
I think here in South Carolina, I don't worry as much about schools like where I'm at. Your Clinton schools that are not in big, huge school districts, because I don't think the community here would allow a sport to be cut without a whole lot of heck getting raised. Now, what I worry about is there's some bigger school districts there's one school district in this state I used to work in, 14 high schools that go from pretty decent 5A. 5A is our highest classification, to some smaller 3As. And those smaller 3As, some of those guys are operating on a shoestring budget because they set the budget the same for everybody. And they don't have the big sense of community. They don't have a lot of donors and things like that. I worry about schools like that, schools that are kind of get lost in the shuffle. That would be the ones that I would be worried about.
All right. Well, figure we'll go ahead and get on with the next question. And Coach Bennett, I'll let you lead off on this one. In your opinion, what do you think has been the biggest challenge or hurdle so far with dealing with COVID-19? If you gun to your head, you had to pick one thing that you thought was the hardest thing to deal with.
The overwhelming feeling that if this season gets banged and we don't play, the kids on the bubble who have their chance, their senior year, got their chance to get out and go somewhere else. And, even if it's go the JUCO route, those kids that have a chance that are on the bubble that need this senior year, losing them to extracurriculars they shouldn't be involved in. That overbearing weight of that possibility bothers me, and it's something we talk about as a staff a lot, because we've got a couple kids that, it's the old adage, they need football way more than football needs them. And you hate to have the possibility of losing those kids. You hate to have that possibility, and you hate it even more that it could be nothing they've done.
Mm-hmm.
It could be something completely out of their control. That's the hardest part. Now, if it's something selfish, I hate coaching in a mask. I absolutely hate it. I'm fat. It's hot down here. It's hot. I hate it. But non-selfish, honest reason, that's the non-selfish, honest thing is those kids, those borderline kids that need this senior year on film. but just it's tough to think about because I've seen a lot of good kids. Take that step their senior year. They go to college. They end up getting a degree. They end up, making the best out of their situation. And if they didn't play their senior year, they wouldn't have that shot.
Okay, Coach Bandstra.
I mean, the selfish thing would be the mask, and I look horribly at teaching, and it drives me insane while I'm coaching too. But that's a whole nother conversation. The hardcore thing is how do I want to word this? My biggest issue or thing I'm concerned about or frustrating is it's for me and it's for the kids. Like, it's the isolation and the mental health aspect. Like, I mean, I get why people don't want to go virtual and do that, and I'm not going to stand here and argue that stuff, but that's why I'm such an advocate for going back. Because, I mean, I'm worried about my kids' mental health. Like, I have a 10-year-old who's going to be 11 soon. I see what this has done to her, just being stuck inside and not really being around her friends. And I mean, there's a big mental health. I struggle at times just because I'm like, you can't go anywhere. You can't do anything. You can't be outside. You can't be around people. Like, or you're highly recommended against. I'll phrase it that way. Like, and I read study after study every day about how this is affecting the mental health of people K through 12. Like, that's my concern. Like, I don't know about y'all's population, but I have kids in really rough homes. Like, they're either in abusive homes, they're in low economic homes where they don't have a lot of food and a lot of resources. So now they're not getting their 2 meals a day they would get from the school from free reduced lunch. I mean, they're not getting that socialization. They're not getting, I mean, we do our best as teachers for online education, but I mean, I'll say this all day long. It's not the same. Like I talked about earlier about paying attention on Zoom calls. I mean, it just is what it is. And good and Coach point, I mean, all these French kids, like from a mental health standpoint, from a safety standpoint to what, I mean, you can say tell them to stay inside all they want. They're going to get into stuff. I'd rather be in a facility where I can monitor what they're doing and kind of keep them on the right path. I don't want them to do something that's going to send their life in a bad direction and so forth. So, I mean, those are my worries, is the mental health and the isolation issues. Like, ain't healthy. Also, sitting on your butt all day ain't healthy. I mean, I put on 20 pounds initially off COVID, and then I was like, oh crap, and I've lost all of it back. But like, I mean, I got players that come back that put on a bunch of weight. It's not healthy. Like, you're putting yourself at higher risk for COVID because studies show obesity is one of the biggest issues with it. But like, I mean, just from a long-term health point in general, it's not safe. Like that's the isolation and mental health is to me is a vastly bigger problem right now.
All right. And like you said, we are going to talk a little bit of college football. So next question is, after seeing certain major college programs and conferences postpone their seasons, how can a high school program ensure the safety of their student athletes with even more limited resources? How can we do more with less? All right. Coach Bandstra, I'll let you go first.
I mean, to me, it depends on what size. I mean, some of those D3s have less resources than I have. I mean, that's just. I mean, that's an unfortunate fact. That's a whole other issue. I think it's kind of like I mentioned earlier. It's vastly different. Like, whereas, I mean, depending on the size of school, we have 11 coaches on our staff plus 71 players. Everybody's there, but like I said already, I mean, state's limited us to 60 at a game. That's 9 through 12. So. I mean, I'm not as worried about it. Like, and then people, I mean, you with the limited capacity, you can run a high school stadium pretty efficiently with a small staff. Mm-hmm. Colleges, you can't. I mean, you're talking 100 plus players. You're talking coaching and support personnel that just are athletic related. You're talking probably 50 to 100 people, not to mention the people that run the stadium. I mean, you're talking probably a couple of 100 people, and filming crews, game day crew. Like you're talking, and I mean, that to me has always been a lot more unrealistic. On limited budgets that are already tight, anyways. Not many Division I programs make money. I mean, And there's other reasons for that. In fact, that how they deal with their finances, but whatever. But that's where that's a lot more realistic. I mean, you've seen how much the NBA spent on a bubble.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, they spend an obscene amount of money. I mean, colleges can't spend that kind of money. And the other thing is, I don't have the travel costs that college teams do. Ohio State has to travel to Iowa, Nebraska, Penn State. I got to travel 20 minutes down the road. I can do that. Worst case scenario, I could probably just have people drive themselves or carpool, so and everybody's not on a bus. But that's 20 minutes down the road. I mean, to our closest opponents are about 20, 25 minutes. That is a realistic time to be around people. I know the time's like 10 to 15 minutes, but if you socially distance properly, wear masks, do what you're supposed to do, you probably do that. Spray stuff down, make sure bus driver cleans in between us being on the bus and off the bus. I know they talk about eliminating locker rooms, so we got to show up dressed. So like I said, that stuff's real. I mean, to me, that's more plausible than a college team. And I get why the Big Ten, the MAC lost a lot of money when the Big Ten canceled, non-conference games. So I get why the MAC didn't have the revenue resources. And I'd argue there's more than just COVID is the reason they delayed, but that's a whole nother conversation. But I get it, and people are scared. It makes sense. Especially, my wife's high risk. I get it. I understand why you're nervous and you're in cancel. I truly do. But I have said this for 3 months, and I will continue to say it. High school is the most realistic because of the lack of travel, the lack of certain issues that you would see, and less people. We just have less people. The exceptions might be like the Texas high schools or like Georgia or some of those states that are just have obscene numbers. And like I said, that's a whole nother conversation. But in here in Ohio, there might be one or two schools where that logistically might be a little difficult. But they usually have the booster revenue to offset some of that stuff. School like mine, I'm not worried about that. I'll have 60 kids tops. You probably won't even carry that much on a game day. You'll have 11 coaches plus about another for stats and film. There are 4 or 5, and then whoever the AD needs. It is highly manageable as long as you follow procedures. Mm-hmm. And in the end, if you can't follow procedures, then you're not going to play football. That just is what it is. It sucks. Move on. I will do everything possible and whatever my head coach and my administration needs to make sure we play within reason. But that goes for me teaching too. I'm going to do whatever cleaning protocols my administration has set forth for me. That's what I'm going to do. My admin told me the other day about how much time we should set aside at the end of class for we can clean the room before the next group comes in. And it makes 100% sense to me. This is what we got to do. Fine. Let me just tell me and give me the resources I need to do it, and it'll get done. Mm-hmm. That's how all coaches need to do. If you truly want to play football and you truly have your kids' best interests in heart, you'll take care of what needs to take care of, or you're going to get shut down. Because I know plenty of administrators in our state that you mess up, they will shut you down. They're not messing with it. No, I wouldn't either.
All right, Coach Bennett, same question.
I think when you ask the question, the first thing that popped in my head is I've heard so many college coaches say at clinics and when you go meet with a college staff, one of the first things they'll say is, if talking about an offensive or defensive scheme, I stole this from a high school coach because high school coaches are the most adaptive. You got to be a little bit ahead of the game because we don't recruit our kids for the most part. And there's a couple schools in this state that if they listen to this, they might be like, oh, he's taking a shot. I don't care. But, high school coaches, most of us are teachers, and the monitor and adjust, we'll figure it out. You give us guidelines. We got to take one extra bus. We'll take one extra bus. We got to have limited seating, or everybody in the stadium's got to wear a mask. Make sure they got a mask when they come in the door. Every high school football game I've ever been to has had security that if somebody's not doing what they ought to do, they'll run them out of there. So I'm right there with what Coach Bandstra said. I think it's a lot more feasible for high school football to be played in any state than it is for big time major college football. But on that same thing, they can do a better job of doing the bubble with their kids. That's the one thing college has got on us is our kids at the end of the day, they're always going home. In football, you can, put them in a football only dorm and they can do virtual classes. There's certain things they can do that we can't. But as far as running a game day, Coach Bandstra nailed it. We need way less manpower. We can do it with less people in the stands. We need some people in the stands because, like we talked about earlier, that budget needs all the help it can get. But it just doesn't take all the resources. I mean, there's nothing like Friday night football. But you go to a Saturday night game at Death Valley in Clemson, South Carolina, you can see they're doing a few things we're not. I mean, I just like to have the money we spend on fireworks for college football games.
All right, guys. So that's enough for my questions. I pulled a couple questions off of Twitter from some other coaches here. And so I figured we'll just keep the same system here. I'll alternate between who answers first. And honestly, I think I'll answer this first one real quick. This one is from Coach McAuliffe. He asks, how are your teams handling team meetings or installs? And how are you handling bad weather days? Are you doing classrooms but spread apart or Zooms at home? Well, here in Virginia, me specifically, for the most part, I've seen a few of them. I have not seen most of our student athletes since they told us school was canceled in March. I mean, I physically have not seen them. So what our head coach has done, he's done a real good job of setting up Zoom meetings. And, early on I had Zoom meetings with just the O-line and we went through some install stuff. Luckily, we're running the same system that we ran the last 2 years. So it's not like we're really installing anything new for us. So that's not, well, I mean, the jump to JV to varsity is going to be a little interesting because we've got one offensive lineman for varsity who had any varsity experience returning. We graduated a lot of O-line. So we're going to have a lot of sophomores and juniors on our O-line. So that's going to be pretty interesting. But how are you guys handling that? I'm pretty interested in hearing about the bad weather days. What are you guys planning on doing for bad weather days?
I mean, bad weather for us just turns into as many spaced out classroom meetings as we can. I mean, we'll still get our lift in. If volleyball is not in the gym because our high school's only got one gym, which that's a whole nother conversation. And it's frustrating. If they're not in there, I mean, we can split them in while one group lifts. We can do conditioning in the gym, spaced out for most part. But if they're in there, like I said, we'll go like A group will go weight room, B group will be spaced out in about 3 to 4 classrooms. So we can do meetings, and we'll go it'll be like 15-minute. I will just ask for 10-minute special team because I know kids don't pay attention long enough in person. They just don't. I'm realistic of what I coach. And then we'll go about 20, 25 offense and 20, 25 defense. So coaches can rotate in and out while the head coach runs the weight room. Maybe one or two coaches in there. And then vice versa. I mean, B group would go the weight room, A group would go do meetings. I mean, we're fortunate. I mean, we have a decent coaching staff, so we can break kids up, and I mean, it's a good staff. So I mean, we're fortunate there. In terms of installs, like I said, a lot of it was Zoom and Google Classroom early on. Did they get some of it? Yeah, but it's just not the same. I mean, that's why we've been starting doing more meetings, spaced out. Obviously, like I said, we're breaking 3 to 4 rooms. I mean, we're trying not to get more than 10 kids in a classroom right now. I mean, that's kind of the goal. We do not want more. I mean, we're going to stay social distance. You're going to wear a mask in that room. It's non-negotiable. I will kick you out. And if I walk by a room, say if I'm done early, I will I or another coach will yank them out. Like that's not. I mean, that's it. We're not messing around with that. We started doing more. Showed a lot of film lately of either practice. I'm very fortunate in that we're able to film our practice. I mean, it's not the greatest film in the world, but you always have an injured kid. I mean, you just do. Or a kid that can't practice today because they forgot something. You know, there's always that kid. I mean, whatever. And so we could show that film. We show our opponent who we're prepping for, kind of some of our adjustments, kind of go through that. I go over Google Classroom stuff. I yell at our freshmen a lot. But yeah, I mean, I mean, we're making the best of bad situation. I mean, it's not the same. I mean, in a perfect world, would I be in auditorium spaced out? Yeah, but we don't have access to that right now. And that is what that is. So we space out as much as possible. I try to limit who I have in my special teams meeting to mostly essential personnel. If you're my 8th gunner, you're not going to be in there. Sorry. I mean, don't suck. I mean, that's the only thing I can tell you. That's the nicest way I can put it. Like, I mean, but I mean, yeah, I mean, again, it goes back to you got to be smart. I mean, just maximize. And this has taught me anything, Coach. You have to maximize time. Do not waste time. Like, and I'm not saying I'm great at that. I'm not by far no means. I mean, that's not my personality. I like to I go off on tangents. I mean, I start roasting kids. That's just personality, who I am. So I got to admit, that's why even more I shorten them more, because that tells me I can't get on those tangents. But yeah, I mean, just be smart. I mean, like I said, we're fortunate. I know other schools that weren't allowed in the weight room till August. We've been in the weight room since June. I mean, those schools had to do on-field stuff. Like, we've been very fortunate with what our administration was able to do for us. Our athletic director was very forward-thinking, got us the cleaning supplies we could do, and we set a plan. And we have a great superintendent who took care of that. But yeah, I mean, again, I understand schools. There's certain schools that just don't have the resources, the support, or what they need to do stuff, or the space. I mean, I've coached at a Division 7 school in this state, which is the smallest division, with a weight room the size of a closet. Like, I mean, you ain't gonna be able to put more than 2 kids in that room. So good luck. I mean, again, we've been fortunate, and again, main thing is bad weather. We've been fairly fortunate. I think we've only had to really change one day. There's some days that are a little iffy with how much rain our field's gotten. But kind of like Coach there, I mean, we've gotten very fortunate with weather. And so, I mean, it's kind of luck of the draw. I mean, just space out as much as you can. I mean, our custodial staff's doing a good job cleaning, so I appreciate that, and just take it day by day.
Coach Bennett.
Yeah, we're pretty similar. When the shutdown started and we all got kicked out of school, a couple weeks into that, I started having offensive line meetings once a week to kind of supplement the fact we weren't going to get spring practice, but we knew we were going to be able to start working out hopefully in June. We're like Coach Bandstra. We started back. The first day we could start back was June 8th, and we started lifting weights June the 8th. And a lot of schools in this state hadn't got that. A lot of schools in this state, some are starting Monday's the 24th, I believe. They're starting the 24th. We got some doing that. There were several that started when we did and had to cancel. There's been a bunch. We canceled 2 or 3 weeks there in the middle because our county's numbers were up, but our numbers been going down, thank God. But we've been working out. But I did the Google Meets. I created a Google Classroom for the offensive line. Our football class already had a Google Classroom, so we were doing weekly team meetings on there as a whole team. And then on Thursdays after team meetings, I was doing an offensive line meeting. As far as bad weather days, I said it earlier, we have gotten the best South Carolina summer we've ever had with weather. We've not been knocked off the field by lightning or thunder, because lightning, obviously, you get off the field. We've had a couple days where it's been really, really light rain. It's almost refreshing to practice and that kind of stuff. And we've been We've been lucky with that. And we have meetings, like I said earlier, we're fortunate with facilities. We got a lot that a lot of people aren't as fortunate. We got the main gym, the auxiliary gym. We got I said that first because I heard Coach Bandstra talk about the one gym thing. We got a big team room. Our weight room's good sized. So we can spread out. We could work out more groups at one time if we wanted to, but we try not to have more than 2 groups there at a time. One group's outside, one group's in the weight room. But if there ever is any overlap, and Coach Sheffer, being an O-line guy, you understand that offensive line group's in there first. So I take them to the far practice field, so we're not actually even on the same field, which is legal by what we have here in the South Carolina. We got a couple practice fields we can spread out on, and just been really, really fortunate. And stuff like that makes me think that we got to have a season, because things have just worked out perfect for having a season with stuff like that. Because I cannot remember one summer, this will be year 12 of doing this, I can't remember a summer we didn't get knocked off the field. No matter what time workout started, get knocked off the field for a pop-up thunderstorm, which we have here all the time. I'll knock on wood, because I'm sure we'll get one on the scrimmage date or something now. But
That's what you get for all that nice weather you get. You get the offset the storms. The offset is offset.
Yeah. I mean, there's a lot of give and take. I mean, we've got the beautiful beaches, but no matter how much we try to enjoy them, all the people from up where you're from in Ohio come down here and invade them in the summer and clog them up for us. So give and take. We enjoy them in September and October when it's still warm enough, because it is hot down here. It's still warm enough.
Oh, yeah. Like when I lived in Texas, like I said before we came on, I lived in Texas 6-7 years, and like great weather. I mean, yeah, it's hot, but it's still great weather. Facility's great. Kind of like you got to deal with thunderstorms. We deal with flash floods. I mean, I got a school they canceled when I was in middle school because of a flash flood. Like I mean, every area's got their thing. I mean, our state in Ohio might snow in May. I mean, you never know.
We had that in the state capital down here in Columbia. I was actually my first teaching job. I was teaching and coaching at a school in Northeast Columbia, and Columbia had what they called a generational flood, 100-year flood, the year before I got there. So I came in the year after the 100-year flood. So anytime it rained really hard, we were going home early. No questions asked. I mean, hurricane season rolls through. Columbia is 2.5 hours from the beach, but hurricane season, heavy rain, they're banging it, man. They had that heavy flood, and I don't blame them, because it tore that place up. So you take those good weather days, but something's coming.
All right. Can you guys remind me, were we talking about locker rooms? Was that before we started recording, or when?
I think that was before.
Okay.
Yeah.
Because this next question from Tom Peck is asking, what are your best locker room practices? And if a player gets shut down, how do you keep them engaged? So, like, quickly describe how you use your locker rooms right now, and then we'll talk about players being shut down here in a little bit. I got a different question for that one.
I can take the locker room question first, because it's easy for me. We're not allowed in locker rooms yet. I was telling Coach Sheffer before we were talking, right now we could start in helmets this week. So tomorrow will be the first day we've worn helmets since last fall. We're going to give helmets out. Now, the high school league, they sent out some things you can do. Place the helmets around the perimeter of the gym, things like that. But to be extra precautious, we are going to, as the coaching staff, we're going to take those helmets and we're going to clean them, and we're going to put them back in the equipment room after they've been sanitized. So that way our kids don't have to worry about, which our kids, we put the numbers on the side of their helmets, so it's not like they can take somebody else's without us knowing. But we're not in locker rooms right now. When locker rooms come back around, which will have to be, like I say, we start practice September 8th. So at some point, locker rooms are going to have to get reintroduced. I do think when we start playing, we'll be similar to what Coach Bandstra was saying. I think away games you'll show up dressed. I don't believe home teams will be providing locker rooms this year. But a lot of times visitor locker room not where you want to be anyway. You'd rather just get dressed out back or somewhere, show up ready. But right now we're not in locker rooms, but that is something we're looking. Like I say, got to be by September 8th because that's when we start. I mean, we can come out. We're helmets and shoulder pads on the 8th.
Yeah, I mean, right now we didn't get locker room access till 2 days started. We only did 1 days this year. That I forgot to even mention that earlier. Like, I mean, that was a decision we made. We just kind of did an extended 1 day because we didn't want to mess with some of those protocols on breaks and all that. Our kids, when we go to the locker room to change after we left, we got 3 groups. So pretty much like lockers 1, 4, set like every 3. Group 1 will go in. You got 6 to 7 minutes. It ain't we know how locker rooms are. We all play football. I mean, half of us were messing around and doing stupid stuff, and you took your time. I mean, you time. No. You got 6 to 7 minutes tops. If we're running behind, you might get 5.
Mm-hmm.
And they don't always like it. And we tell them like part of this ain't gonna be fun. And I'm sorry about that. Like that's just the world we're in right now. But you need to move. Like it ain't messing around. Like get in, get out, so the next group can get in and get out. Like you enter through the outside door, you leave through the door that goes in the hallway, then out the side door. Like you don't go back in the same way. It's just move. Okay. Highly recommend they wear the mask while they're in the locker room. But obviously they're changing, so that's a whole nother. And then we got coaches and duties. Like I got me and 2 other coaches got group 1. When group 2 comes in, new set of coaches come in, just so not everybody's doing the same duty over and over again. It's kind of like that way we rotate through. That way, if I need to handle anything before practice, which is probably always almost something, go do that real quick, etc. Each coach can kind of. I mean, they only got about 60-minute shift, and then we do the same thing after practice. Like this group will come in first. You got 5 to 6 minutes to get changed, get out. Then next group, the next group. I mean, it's the same policy. Like, and then kind of going back to the locker rooms. I mean, for games right now, home team will probably have locker room. Away team won't. The only thing what you have to provide away team is access to bathrooms. Obviously, if you need a bathroom, you need to show up dressed. Pretty much, we've been told if there's thunderstorms, it's probably going to postpone to the next day, unless because there's no. I mean, your only option is go on the bus, and you don't want to be in that small closed encounters for an extended time given COVID policies. Mm-hmm. So you're going to come back tomorrow, which will suck. I mean, it's going to happen. I mean, I about every year I've had one game where I've come back from a thunderstorm or rain delay. I mean, we did this year, and I watched the opposing kicker with no warm up make a 45-yard field goal that would have been good for 60, but that's depressing. But yeah, I mean, that's where we are with locker rooms. I mean, everybody will be a little different depending on the size of your locker room. I mean, we got a decent size. I wouldn't say it's huge. It's a little weirdly shaped, but I mean, as long as you go every 3, you can social distance far enough. I mean, as a coach, I just got to make sure they're not doing something stupid and trying to get on top of each other. I mean, that's the biggest thing right there.
All right. I'm going to go ahead and go to the last question. There's a reason I left this one for last because it's the one that everyone wants to hear an answer to. What happens when an athlete gets sick? All right. Is there an immediate shutdown? Can you postpone games, make them up later, or do you have to forfeit? So I'm going to – Coach Bandstra, I'll let you lead off with this one.
Some of this I have an answer to and some of us don't like. That's not 100% clear. I mean, in terms of what happens, forfeit, cancel, or postpone. I mean, pretty much, I think that's part of the reason our state wants everybody just makes playoffs. That way it doesn't really hinder anybody. That's still not 100% clear. I'm assuming that's probably somewhere in the directive our governor put out today. That's going to be like fully released by tomorrow in terms of in writing. I mean, I know our state association probably said something. I know I probably got my buddy who's a local rep for us for our state association probably yelling at me at the screen right now as he listens to this, but it's probably in there somewhere. But as far as I know, I mean, you're going to lose 2 weeks. I mean, if your team gets shut down. in terms of sick, if you're talking have symptoms and not necessarily a COVID positive, I mean, we tell all of our kids, if you have any symptoms relating that could be considered COVID, you can't come today, like until you're symptom free. Like if you're vomiting today or you have a fever, no. I mean, I can't tell you to go get a COVID test legally. I can't. And that's between you and your parents. But if you have any symptoms, do not be here. Like that is our policy, because I mean, there still is things called colds, and you just ate something that disagreed with you. I mean, not everything's COVID. I mean, that's just a factual statement. I mean, but again, we'll be precautious. We tell them, you have any symptoms that are like, you don't come. You've thrown up, you got fever, any of that. If you have multiple, I recommend you get tested, but I can't force you. I mean, that's in the end, that's between you and your custodial guardian. We do tell them if they do get tested, they cannot come back until they've tested negative. I mean, that is district policy. If you go get a test, you cannot reappear until you have a negative. That is the district policy on that. Very good policy, in my personal opinion. And so it kind of go from there. I mean, the only snag you kind of get is what if after 7 to 14 days you still don't have a result because they get backlogged. Mm-hmm. Our policy is after 14 days, because that's the typical quarantine period suggested by, I think, the CDC and our local health department, then you're good. If you test positive, you can't come back until you test negative to get a negative test. And it can't be just like, oh, I tested negative. No, I need something, either a PDF or in writing. So, I mean, that is what that is. I mean, just gotta, again, it comes out of constant communication. I've had kids who got sick who can't come for like a day or two, but they're not still showing symptoms. I mean, they probably don't have it, but I also make the argument, student athletes are probably the last ones to know that they had it, because most of them are in good physical shape and they're in that age bracket that don't show symptoms. Mm-hmm. I mean, if a kid in our age brackets know they have it, it's probably because they were around somebody who's tested positive, not because they had symptoms. So, I mean, that's the problem we're going to have to deal with and figure out. In terms of canceled games, our state has pretty much said, after everybody makes the playoffs, if you get eliminated in like the first 2 rounds, you can still play teams who are also out. So you can go back and make up a game through like they got like a deadline. Like there's like a 3-week period where you can make up games. Teams can also opt out of the playoffs. There's going to be some teams that do it. Like if you're 0-6, are you going to opt into the playoffs? I mean, that's just I don't know. I mean, that's an interesting question for an AD and a head coach to talk about. Mm-hmm. You can make a run. Stranger things have happened. I mean, they have. I mean, the Bengals still haven't won a playoff game in my lifetime, so I mean, whatever. Yeah. I mean, so if we say our school goes 6-0, gets a bad draw in the first round of the playoffs, and we get eliminated, we're 6-1. I mean, we'll probably play 2 or 3 local teams, and I mean, in our conference that are out of it already. I mean, you're 6-1. Why not keep playing? I mean, that's the legitimate art. Like, I didn't play Greenville this year. Why not? Let's go play Greenville. Or we didn't play Troy this year. Let's go play Troy. Like, but again, we'll kind of see how that happens.
With us, if an athlete gets sick, we have been rightfully so. We've been overly precautious about this. So, like, one of my best offensive linemen, he works for a landscaping company. Well, he showed up one day coughing. Well, I'm, stole country hick from South Carolina. I said, well, he's got straw cough. You out there working with straw, and hey, it's going to happen. Our trainer sent him home. He didn't come that week. He went and got tested. Test results come back negative. He was back on Monday. But that was something that, even though I was 99% sure it was just straw cough, and I ended up being right, I wasn't willing to roll the dice on that 1%. Mm-hmm. And our trainer did a great thing. The funny part was, I was down on the field. I saw him pull in. I saw the rest of the guys coming down, and I just saw his truck leave. And I was like, what's he doing? So then I called Coach Fountain, our head coach, and I was like, "What's going on?" She said, he said, he's coughing. I said, "He works with straw and hay. Of course he's coughing." But he was like, "Well, with all this," I was like, "Yeah, I mean, I get it." So stuff like that. I was telling Coach Sheffer before you jumped on, Coach Bandstra, we've been real fortunate. Hadn't had a player test positive in the entire athletic department. We've had less than 5 total, and they've all been like a couple female athletes and so non-football. And then we had one kid that had a positive test that was going to come out for football but never did. So, we've been really fortunate. No positive tests. We've had a couple guys who's had family members test positive. We've like, look, if you stay with them, don't come till they're better, that kind of thing. How the state's going to handle it? Right now, if a team gets shut down and can't play, that is I think the terminology they used was forfeit without penalty, which is tough to understand. Like, you're not going to get fined is basically what that means. High school league's not going to fine you, but I imagine that's still going to count in your region standings and only the top 2 make it. So, and the way our schedules are set up, we're playing 7 games. Start with region because you want to get region games in. So we've got 5 region games, then 2 non-region games that would typically be before the region this year. So it's flipped. You usually play your non-conference schedule first. So we actually play our region games, and after week 5, we'll know whether we're in or not, and we got to go play 2 more games. Well, if you're sitting in the catbird seat as the number 1 team in the region, or you're second, you're going to have to go on a tough road game in the first round. What do you do those last 2 games that don't count for playoff standings, but one of them's the county rival, and the other one's a long-time rival for decades and decades past that hadn't been on the schedule in a few years? You can't roll out there. You can't roll your JV kids out there and get hammered, but playoffs are starting. Mm-hmm. Whether you play those games or not. So it's a real interesting dynamic. We'll play them. We don't know how the region will pan out. We got a tough region, and hopefully we're in one of those 2 slots. But it'll make those next 2 games very interesting, because if a kid's borderline, like he's not feeling great, he's being held out of some things at practice, we probably won't play him. You know what I mean? So it's going to make things very interesting here in the state. But the way they've worded it here, it's almost like you're not going to get fined. So if some of these bigger school districts that don't want to play anyway and don't want all their kids back in school till there's a vaccine sometime in the future, then they don't have to play. Mm-hmm. Now, what that's going to create is a nightmare for transfers. And because, some of these kids are going to play. If they got to move in with an aunt or uncle or a cousin or something like that, they'll find a way to play. So, and that affects, like we were talking about earlier, that affects your money, kids leaving your district. So it's real interesting down here right now. It's a fun time.
All right, guys. So we've gone through all our questions, and we give you both an opportunity to voice any final thoughts here. Just a lot of coaches are going through a lot of stuff. Everybody's going through a lot of stuff. It's not a whole lot of positives that we've been seeing right now. So, Coach Bennett, I'm going to let you go first here. You have any final thoughts you'd like to voice before we head out?
My final thoughts will go along with my opening statement. I think there's a lot of negativity out there in the world right now, and a lot of things dividing people. And you see it. Twitter's a phenomenal app. We follow each other. That's how I reached out to you when you said you needed people for this. And for the football coaching community, Twitter is a beautiful thing because people share information, and they send you drill tapes, and they'll answer questions, and young coaches can reach out to older coaches, and older coaches can reach out to younger coaches and figure some things out. But on the flip side of that, I mean, there's so many people within the football community and on the outside of the football community that are just out here trolling to make everything a political issue and make everything I'm right, you're wrong. And, you know, there's a bunch of people like that on Twitter that I'm sure some of us follow and some of us have unfollowed, blocked, anything like that. There's a couple that I follow just for pure entertainment that I'm sure I would never agree with on anything and probably never hang out with in a social setting. But it is entertaining to me because my life isn't wrapped up in what people say to me behind a phone on the Twitter sphere from 3,000 miles away or however far. Instead of focusing our energy on that, I think we as the football community should focus our energy on our kids and getting our kids back to doing what they love to do. And I understand I've come a long way in seeing COVID-19 and seeing its effects and how it's gripped the nation and all that. But at the end of the day, I think the opportunity that's going to be snatched from so many kids, I don't know if the juice is worth the squeeze in doing that for the numbers that are out there. I think we should play, and I hope all states get to play. And I really hope you guys that are pushed to the spring, I hope y'all can, you know, keep a strong face for your kids and go out and have the best dang season in the spring you can. And we don't know what that's going to be like to go back and play in the fall after playing in the spring. I saw where Urban Meyer doesn't think it's a good idea. Now, regardless of what you think Urban Meyer, he's been around the game for a little bit and probably knows a little bit more than the average Joe about the effects on the body of playing a football season and trying to bounce back and play another one. I mean, sometimes it's tough to do after a year. You know, you think about a kid playing in the spring, you know, if God forbid they were to get hurt, depends on what the injury is, they might be out for that fall season. And that's, I mean, it's going to be interesting to see. But I hope everybody that plays in the spring has a great season and everybody comes out healthy. And maybe some kids find some opportunities in the spring because it's going to be real interesting with the NCAA and recruiting because they're going to have to make some rule changes. Mm-hmm. They're going to have to change the open and close period of when you can talk to recruits because half the states are going to be playing in the spring and not in the fall. So it's the ripple effects are going to be felt across the football world. And I'm just really glad and really lucky and fortunate to be here. And right now we're going forward to playing in the fall, and I just hope it stays that way and hope that our kids can get back to some sense of normal because whether you're right, left, anything, this ain't normal and it's not healthy from a mental or physical standpoint for our kids to not be around other kids and involved and the social aspects of what a team gives you and what a team builds. It's so good for kids and it's so tough on them to not have that. So I hope you guys that are playing in the spring, I hope you can get back with your kids soon, even if it's just lifting weights. Mm-hmm. Man, I'm telling you, the first time they come in that weight room on June the 8th when they hadn't been in there for a couple months, those are some of the best lifts you've ever seen because they're just jacked up to be back with their boys. That's kind of my spill on it, but I'm just an old boy from South Carolina. So what I don't know.
I mean, my biggest thing is be smart. I mean, do what you're supposed to do. What are the protocols you like, whether it's coaching or teaching or whatever you're like, do what you need to do. I don't care if you agree with wearing a mask or not. I really don't. But if you care about athletics or somebody in your family, like, just do it. Like, it's not like, just be smart. Like, I do not like wearing a mask. It drives me absolutely insane. But one, I don't want to be fined. That's A. B, I have high risk people I'm around. And I don't want, like, I mean, whether I get it or not and how it affects me is probably going to be minimal compared to like my wife or other people. So I don't want them to get sick. And more than anything, I want to be able to play. And not just football. I want to see ball athletics in general. I mean, I've had a third of our volleyball team in class over the past 2 years. I generally like all those girls. I want to see them be able to play volleyball. I've had probably about a third of the band in class over the past 2 years. I want to see them be able to do whatever they need to do, whether it's, I mean, I don't think they're really going to be performing on Fridays right now, last I heard, but like however they're going to do competitions or like whatever they're going to do in terms of limited capacity, I want them to be able to do it. Our soccer team, same thing. Like, if you have family who are trying to do things, be smart, do what you're supposed to do to help ensure that. Okay. That's why you see a lot of these schools on Wear the Mask campaign. Let's just be smart. Like, we can argue later about who was right and who was wrong in terms of whether we overreacted, didn't react far enough. That can be discussed later. That's not the point right now. Point right now is the best interest of these kids. Like, and that's like, stop being selfish and how can we do best for these kids? Because they're our future. Like, I said that being 29 years old. Like, I'm not old by any means, but they're the future. They're the people that need to be educated. Okay, so this democracy survives and continues to grow. Okay, and so our economy runs well and they live good lives. As a parent, I take the responsibility that my job is to improve the life of my daughter that's better than mine. That is, well, even if it's by 10%. Like, that is my job as a parent. Well, I can't do that if I'm doing stupid stuff. Okay, I got to wear my mask. I got to make sure stuff's in line. And then and I just lost the thought as I started saying it. I mean, if it comes back to me, I'll say it. But just like, yeah, that's the great thing about doing the record these. Like, hopefully it comes back to you. But like I said, it's care about the kids, focus on the kids, and I will probably remember it after we go off air or whatever the hell else I was going to say. So, Coach, it's yours.
I'll just have to have you back on the next time we do a COVID update or something.
I had a thought and I just started rambling. I'm just like, oh, what was it? Oh, man, I got nothing right now. So
you got teacher brain right now. That's what that is.
Oh, don't get started on teacher brain right now. Just like, God.
I was gonna say, it's just like when you're teaching and you're really rolling with it, and you're like, wait a minute,
where was I? Yeah,
I lost it. Yeah,
that's exactly how it is. You're just like, oh crap. But oh well.
All right, guys. Well, I really appreciate you guys coming on, and I hope to have you guys on again on another episode sometime soon. So